Hi everyone. Hi Cole. Hello.
Hey Logan, how are you?
I'm great. How are you, Jeanette?
I'm doing great. It's Jennet, actually.
Janet. I keep messing that
It's
up.
like everybody does,
Yeah.
literally everybody.
I even reminded myself, like I underlined the Jenn. I was like, Janet. Janet.
hmm
Still did
It's a
it. Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
It's a thing. Nobody mad.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining me.
Oh my God, what
It's
a treat.
great to see you. Yeah.
Yeah. How's my sound? Can you hear me okay?
You sound great.
Okay,
Yes.
super.
And you're centered perfectly in the frame. So
See, like I worked this.
yeah,
Like
you're ready. I'm impressed. So thank you to everyone for tuning in. Welcome to another episode of Meeting and Reading. My name is Logan Esterling. My guest this week is Jennet Ingle. Um, she is the principal oboe of the South Bend Symphony Orchestra and the Northwest Indiana Symphony. She's the owner-operator of Jennet Ingle Reeds. They have amazing products, amazing reeds, amazing canes, so go check it out. And she also creates some of the best, maybe arguably the best, oboe and reed YouTube content. So definitely check out her YouTube content as well. Thank you so much for joining me.
oh my God, that is so nice of you to say all of those nice things.
Of course. I'm excited to nerd out with you and talk about reeds.
Absolutely. It's such a pleasure. I can talk about the oboe literally all day. So
Me too. Yes. Awesome. Well, let's jump into it. I'm curious about your basic setup. So we'll start with the cane brand that you use primarily, and then the gouge that you use.
I use primarily Mexican cane,
Okay.
which I also carry in my shop. And I like it because it is just so medium. It's just so like basically fine. It is not the hardest cane, the softest cane, the grainiest, the
Yeah.
tightest, the most colorful. Like it's just nice and it vibrates and it always works. So
Nice.
I'm pretty happy with that. And then I also sometimes will use Rigati
Okay.
if I feel like it. That's the other thing that I have in my house.
Nice. Yeah, I'll definitely have to order some of that Mexican cane. I'm so curious. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But I mean, also, I will a little bit go out on a limb and say, like, all the cane makes reeds. It's
Yes.
fine. Like,
Yes.
I also have a bunch of bags of like hand-me-down cane that other people have divested themselves of.
Yeah.
And like, I don't sell that cane in my store because it's no-name cane and like I can't talk about it intelligently. But
Yeah.
occasionally I'll make a read with it, and it
Yeah.
makes reads. It always makes reads. It's the free cane that I send out with my read making course, and it's
Nice.
fine. It makes
Yeah.
reads. So
That's awesome. Good.
yeah,
Cool. And what about the gouge that you use?
I use an Inaletti,
Okay.
and I really love it. I grew up using Ross gouges, and I mean, as anyone who's had a Ross gouge knows, when it is good, it is the best thing that has ever existed. Like
Mhm.
the good Ross reed is such a pleasure to play, and the high register is so sweet and held together, and everything is perfect. But it takes a lot of time and effort and energy for me to get
Mhm.
that perfect read off the Ross gouge, and so
Yeah.
I use the Inaletti on which everything works all the time.
Yes. Yeah. I recently got a used Inaletti. I'm on the wait list. Have been for a year, but
Mm-hmm.
I got to use one, and it's so effortless, and it just the reeds just vibrate. It's such a nice feeling.
Exactly. Exactly. It's just like it's easy to turn out a read that works and like tweak it to be as good as it can be, which
Yeah.
is just about as good as that one perfect Ross read that you worked for 6 months to find.
Yes. Exactly. Yeah. I love that. Great.
Yeah.
Cool. And then I'm also curious because you have videos of you using other equipment like the shaping machine. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that.
Oh my God, I'm such a sucker for the Reads and Stuff shaping machine. It's this little device and it
Oh,
has cut
beautiful.
all of my shaping. It cuts my shaping time in oh Lord, now I can't figure out how to do the math. If it takes me like 2 minutes to hand shape
Mm,
a piece of cane, it takes me like 20 seconds
wow.
to do it on the machine.
Yeah.
And so I love it for that. And it's super consistent and symmetrical and very hard to screw up. So I'm very, very into the Reeds and Stuff shaping machine. But
Mm.
sorry, do you want me to talk about this? I can go
Yes,
on and
no,
on.
please. Yeah,
Okay.
please.
The problem with the Reeds and Stuff shaping machine is that um, it comes with 100 different templates that you could
Mm,
purchase, just like shaper tips for your regular manual shaper.
mhm,
But they're not familiar and they're not the same
mm,
as the hand shapes that are out there.
yeah.
So, for instance, before I got this shaping machine, I'd been making my living with the Gilbert -1N, which I was crazy about, and with the Caleb -1 sometimes, sometimes Samson +1. I'd never really used the Joshua 2,
Hmm.
but those were sort of my main shapes. And when I picked up this machine, there wasn't a Caleb -1 option. There was a Gilbert -1, but it's completely, vastly different from the
That's
actual
so
hand
weird.
shape. It just comes
Yeah.
out so different. And so I ended up having to try a ton of templates to find something that worked for me because it's not actually the same because the machine
Interesting.
works differently. And I believe in my heart of hearts that when Udo developed those templates, he did, I'm sure, take the measurements from the hand shape, but somehow the machine works differently enough.
Yeah.
And it's weird enough that even if like the dimension here at the tip and here at the belly and here at the throat are all the same, the curve is different or something.
Gotcha.
Something
Gotcha.
is
Yeah.
different. So I ended up trying a ton of different things. And now on that shaping machine, my favorite shape of all time is the Joshua 2
Okay.
template,
Nice.
which is a little different than the one you would buy if you just like got the little manual hand shape.
Hmm.
So in other words, I guess I had decades of learning curve associated with trying shapes and purchasing different things. I mean, I have all of these. How do I show? I have to get it up to my face. I have
Yeah.
all of
Oh my
these shaper
gosh.
tips
Wow.
for Obo and English horn. Just dropped
Yeah.
one. Um,
That is amazing. How many
but
would you say total?
a dozen, 15, something like
Okay.
that. And
Nice.
all things that I had picked up at one point or another along the journey
Yeah.
to try and to experiment with something. Um, and then I sort of had to embark on my whole journey of discovery again when I got this
Yeah.
machine, which it's
Yeah.
still worth it because it makes the shaped cane so
Yeah.
fast.
Yeah.
But it
That's
definitely
great.
took me a lot of buying things to come
Yeah.
up with what I liked on it.
Nice. Yeah. A fun journey of read discovery.
Oh,
um, that's great. No, that's a great description of the machine, and I've heard some great things about it, and
yeah.
I'm really curious about getting one myself at some point. Um, cool,
Yeah,
awesome.
I really like it. I totally recommend Udo's machines. I just, that's my caveat on that one.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay, cool. Let's see what else. Oh, staples. I'm curious
Oh,
what you use for that.
well, I mean, because I have this business and because not everyone wants the same thing, I
Mm,
offer a whole bunch of different things.
yeah.
And so I offer just totally basic synthetic cork tubes on totally basic brass tubes, brass
Hmm.
staples from Aspen Woodwinds.
Okay.
And I love them. They don't have the little stupid bevel at the bottom, which I do not like, which
Hmm.
makes it sort of confusing to measure sometimes.
Yeah, agreed.
And I've tried a bunch of different student staples, and these are the ones I love because they are super consistent. And every one
Nice.
of them is basically the same. They fit on the mandrel, they make a reed, the reed is fine. So my basic reeds go out on that. But I also use Chirugi 2 Plus
Okay.
sometimes, and I use the DNR Ostowich, the Double or Nothing Reeds Ostowich tube, which has just
Yeah.
been developed in the last couple of years. Um, I like, oh, and I use the Pisoni Artist in silver. So those are the ones that
Nice.
like do most of my work on.
Mm.
And I find that I like the Pisoni the best
Okay.
personally because I love how much resistance there is in
Yeah.
those staples. Like when I play the oboe, I really want to have a lot to blow against. And I don't necessarily want to have that be in the reed itself. I would rather
Yeah.
like have the reed be responsive, but
Yeah.
I need some bulk somewhere.
Yeah. I like that.
Yeah. So for me, the Pisoni artist in silver is my current go. It's among my current go-tos. It's my
Nice.
favorite of the staples I stock. The DNR Ostowich
Yeah.
tube.
Could you tell me a
Um,
little bit about that too?
yeah, it's real heavy. Do I have any? Oh, I'm out of them. That's why
Oh
I.
no.
Oh no. So I'm going to talk about it, but no one order any until April
Okay. Got it.
because I got zero. Um, so I find that the metal is heavy. It's very thick, just like the Pisoni tube is. I have it in brass, which makes, well, I don't know whether it's the brass or the structure of the tube that
Mm.
makes the sound just feel a lot warmer than the Pisoni.
Okay.
It's a little more vibrant. It holds its pitch up in the upper register a little bit better for me.
Nice.
And I like it. So for me, that Pisoni artist tube is like a cool heaviness, and the
Hmm.
Ostowich is a warm heaviness, and the
Okay.
Chirugi just sort of goes as soon as you blow, which
Okay.
is not my preference, but lots of people like it.
Yeah. Okay.
And
Yeah.
and really, what I need in a staple is I need the dimension right at the top of the staple to make sense to me. Like that's the
Hmm.
part that has to line up with my tube. I am not sciency about
Mm.
staples and reeds. Really, I just like I'll make batches and batches of reeds and decide what I like based on that.
Nice.
So I couldn't tell you what the difference is in like the cone or
Yeah.
the roundness to ovalness, or like I can't tell you
Yeah. I
anything
can't either.
about
Yeah.
those four staples that I'm using. But I can tell you what I like and what I don't like.
Nice. Yeah, I think that's the best way to find out what you do like is just make a bunch of reads on on that kind
Hmm.
and take a
Yeah, and then
make a decision later. Yeah,
yeah,
about what
exactly.
works best. Yeah.
And honestly, that's really the magic part of having a reed business is that I have
Mm.
so much um, bulk going through my hands every week. Like I make so many reads that it's easy for me to say, okay, I need to do an experiment around this. I'll take these next five
Yeah.
and like make them like this, and then I'll do the five after as controls, and we'll just see what really happens. Because I feel like an experiment with a reed can't be one reed,
Yeah.
because any one read could be terrible for any number of reasons.
Yeah.
But
Amen. Yeah. Yeah.
if I make five, like I'm going to feel something about
Yeah.
the trend
Nice. Yeah.
there.
So you brought up I feel the same way about like I record a lot of data with my machine learning and with my read business.
Hmm.
Um and so I've recently, I started back in late July of last year. And so I've been trying to kind of like formulate my process to really like, fine tune a process that's efficient. And I'm curious what your process is, with 200 reads going out every month. How do you do that?
I batch them like crazy.
Mm.
So I really focus on efficiency. Okay, part of it I will readily admit. Part of it is that I've outsourced most of my winding at this point.
Oh,
I've got
nice. Okay.
three fantastic oboists spread out over the country who are winding blanks for me every month.
That's
So I do
amazing.
almost none of that at home because that, as you know, right, winding a reed is, you have to do it right,
Yes.
but it doesn't help you to do it A plus, right? It's just a
Right.
pass fail system. If you can wind a blank that like meets spec, that's all
Hmm.
it has to be, and it is a skilled task, but it
Mm.
is not an interesting task
Yeah.
for me.
Yeah. I agree.
Um,
Yeah.
so I've outsourced that almost fully right
Nice.
now. As I if I run out of say Pisoni blanks, which I'm about to, I will force myself to wind up 8 or 10 of them. And honestly, my wind has gotten bad since
Mm.
I've been outsourcing the winding.
Yeah.
Like it's a skilled task, and if I'm not doing it regularly,
Yeah.
I make mistakes, I overwind, I leave leaks, and I'm not really like happy with myself doing that. So for
Yeah.
a million reasons, I outsource that.
Yeah. It's quite tedious. It's, I would arguably say, my least favorite part of
It
of remaking
it
it.
is mine too, because you have
Yeah.
to pay attention, but also it's the
Right.
same thing over and over again.
Yeah.
And if you wind up an A plus blank, it still might be a terrible read
Right.
for any number of
Exactly.
reasons.
Exactly. Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
my first hack is I just don't do that part.
Nice.
But my second hack is that have spent I've spent a lot of time just sort of trying to break down how my batch processing is going to work, and I've got
Hmm.
a really clear system now that works for me and that I teach also inside my read making programs, and
Nice.
on my YouTube channel, of course. Like I talk about it all the time, and I
Yeah.
just sort of go 4 days from start to finish. I take a blank, and if I've just wound it, I'll leave it overnight so it can rest. And on day one, I will pick up that blank, which has all of its bark still on and the tip still closed, and I will hack away everything that doesn't seem like a reed. I'll just long scrape it and construct a basic reed looking reed until it beeps and crows. And that's all
Okay.
it has to do. It doesn't have to be great. It doesn't have to play on the oboe. I don't have to get emotionally attached
Yeah.
at all because it's just a day one read. I
Yeah.
don't I right, I don't even put it on the oboe. I just make sure it beeps and crows and then I throw it in the box. And that's it for that. And I can do that in like 2 minutes.
Nice.
Right? It takes no time.
Mm.
And so if I go through and do 12 of those, say, in an evening, then that's a good day's work. And meanwhile, I have a bunch
Yeah.
that I started the day before, and I'll turn those day one reads into day two reads, which takes me, again, maybe 2 minutes.
Yeah.
And basically, I'll just thin the tip again, balance it, and get it to C crow and playing on the oboe.
Nice.
And
Okay.
it doesn't have to be great. It
Hmm.
just has to be a C crow and responsive and able to be played.
Yeah. Nice.
And so if it hits that spec, that's
Mm.
all I need to do with it on day two. And that only takes me a couple minutes.
Nice.
So then on day three, when I pick that read back up, that's when I start to care a little bit. Like
Mm.
up
Yeah.
until then, it just has to like meet spec and like not have the corners fallen off.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
Um, but on day three, then I'll start to pay attention to like what does this actual read need from me? This read is sitting too flat. This read is sitting too sharp. This read is too open. This read has a real raunchy sound. And I'll tweak those so that after day three, they all feel like good. Like I should, like they're heavy probably still because they don't break in very much if I'm only working on them that fast.
Right. Yeah.
But after day three, I feel like that is really the read that I've got. And normally what happens next is I'll sort those at that point into the ones that are medium soft and the ones that feel like mediums and the one that feels like medium hard, which I grade on a curve, right? Like if
Yeah.
I like it, it's medium.
Mm.
And if it feels too easy for me, it's medium soft. And if it feels too hard for me, it's medium hard.
Nice. Okay. That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. And from there, I'll just sort them and sanitize them and send them.
Nice. That's great.
Yeah.
I love that.
And so, yeah, that's basically it. I try to detach emotionally from the reads for as long as I can
Yeah.
and just sort of
Smart.
whip through the steps.
Yes. Yeah. That is a very necessary and difficult thing to do sometimes, you know.
It really is. People
Yeah.
get worked up.
Yeah.
But I just feel like I got no time to waste. So my long scrape just goes whoosh, 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 and the cane is
Yeah.
gone.
I love that. No, one thing I really like about your videos is how quickly you can get cane off. And something about how sharp you're getting your knife is it just happens. You know, it just comes right off. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'll say, though, that I'm careless also. I'm
Mm.
unfussy also about the sharpness
Yes.
of my knife, right? It needs
Okay. Yeah.
to it needs to be able to grab a little bit, but this knife, as you can see, I think is pretty old and beat up at this point. It's
Mm.
pretty bowed, and it's not actually sharpening to a terrific level anymore.
Hmm.
And I actually find it very easy to work with a knife like that, taking bark off, doing day one scrapes, um, even doing limited day two scrapes, turning it into a reed.
Nice.
So I guess I'm sort of the belief that yes, your knife has to be sharp, but it doesn't have to be objectively sharp. It just has
Yeah.
to be like the kind of sharp that works for you,
Yeah.
the kind of sharp that
Nice.
makes you happy.
Yeah. I like that. Yeah. Speaking of knives, that was one of our submitted questions, actually. How do you avoid knife skipping while you're scraping?
Um, Pressure a little bit. Like
Mhm,
I'm sorry. The first answer is
mhm.
that sort of chattery knife thing that I assume your questioner is asking
Yes.
about. Often happens for me when my knife is just too sharp.
Mm,
Actually, I sort of want to be able to see if I'm going to show you. I have to get the
yeah.
knife up to my
Yeah.
face. It's
Yeah.
tricky. Um, so if my knife is too sharp, which this one is not, it tends to like catch and then jump and catch and jump and catch and jump. And instead, if I use this knife that is relatively dull, like you fellow reed maker who knows what he wants probably wouldn't like this knife.
Mm,
And it's not my favorite either. It's just like the knife that I would use for this.
okay.
But I put a fair amount of pressure on. As I'm working on reeds, I think it's really important to have a good hand position that
Mm.
makes it visible. Oh, look. Does this button turn my camera around or does this
I
button
think,
switch our sides?
oh, it does turn your camera around. Yes, it should.
Oh,
Yeah.
let's see if this is a thing.
There
Oh,
we
look at
go.
that.
Beautiful.
Look at that. And it must go like this because it's Instagram. And then my hand goes here. Can I zoom?
Nice.
Oh,
Oh my gosh. Wow.
nice. Look at that.
Wow, that's
Learning in
great.
real time. Oh, God. All right. And there's my reeds and stuff machine in the way. And there's my hand. Okay. I feel like a lot of people that I see um, struggle to really get leverage on
Mm,
their reed with their knife. And for me, this is all about hand position. I love having my a finger right under the thing that I'm scraping, and so that as I scrape with my knife right hand is just rotating. My left hand is using the thumb and the finger in opposition
yeah.
to really like resist the knife. The thumb is pushing, the finger is resisting. And so I've got actually a lot of control and a lot of pressure that I'm putting on
Nice.
the knife, not with my right hand, which is pretty relaxed,
Mm,
but with my left thumb and forefinger. So I'm really actively
nice.
resisting the knife with my reed with my finger instead of trying to like hack at it with the knife. Sorry, I keep falling out of the frame.
Yeah. Oh, that's okay.
Instead of hacking at it with the knife.
Okay. Nice.
Okay, I'm going to bring this back around because this is not the most
Yeah.
successful, uh,
That's a
not
great
the most
visual. Yeah.
successful angle.
Yeah. That's great. No, that's a great response to that question. Yeah. Thank you.
Of course.
Yeah. Another question, kind of relating to scraping. Do you prefer to scrape on dry or wet cane?
Moist.
Mm, yes.
I would say moist.
Middle of the road. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely will soak my blank for a couple of minutes before I pick it up and work on it. And if it feels dry and scratchy under my knife, I will uh, get the bark off and then re-soak it for a few minutes before I do anything else. Um,
Nice.
but I am not too fussy about like exactly how long it must stay in the water. I just want it to feel pliable,
Yeah.
um, largely because I do put a lot of pressure on it with my knife. I'm
Mm.
pressing hard almost right from the beginning, and that curvature of the cane, hello, getting my angle, and that curvature of the cane, if it's dry and I put that kind of pressure on it, it's just going to crack right away.
Yeah.
So because almost everything I do winds up flattening
Mm.
the reed a little bit, I feel like it's got to be soaked.
Nice. Yeah, I agree. Awesome.
Yeah. I also gouge soaked even on the Inaletti, which I know is against the rules.
Yeah.
But I just find it easier to work with, and I don't totally trust the micrometer that
Mm.
comes with the Inaletti
Oh,
machine.
me
It feels a
either.
little
Yeah.
sketchy, so
Yeah.
I gouge soaked so that I can pull the cane off and just like twist it in my fingers and make sure it
Okay.
feels right.
Nice. Yeah, I use a separate micrometer from what came with the machine, for
Hmm.
that same reason. Yeah. Nice. Yeah, I'll have to try it soaked. I've never tried it on the Inaletti soaked before. So
Yeah, it's against the rules, so do with that information what you
yeah.
will.
Okay. Will do. I was curious a little bit about kind of your career path. and kind of where you started and how you got to where you are now.
I mean, honestly, I feel like if 22-year-old me, graduating from the Eastman School of Music, looked at for year old me right now, she would have said, "Well, wait a minute, why? Wait a minute. The plan was to be principal oboe in a major orchestra and doing like solo engagements all the time."
Mm.
And in fact, what I would say is I am so happy with the career that I have, in which I am principal oboe in an orchestra. I do play solos and concertos all over the place as much as I can. Not so very much as we are locked down, but like as much as I can, lots.
Yeah.
And I have this reed business which supported my family through the pandemic.
Wow, that's
and
awesome.
I am teaching these fantastic people that I'm super excited to work with, and I've got this video series which is fun for me to make, and I've got this blog which is fun for me to share, and I have a little bit of a platform where like people can see me and respond to me, and I have an audience that I can be back and forth with. Like, it's my career delights me so much, and I don't think I could be happier. I am certain that I would not be happier in a like single paycheck position
Yeah.
where every day I came to work and worked for somebody else,
Mm.
even if that was a terrific conductor and like wonderful colleagues surrounding me, which in fact I already have.
Yeah.
But it's only part-time, which means that I can keep exploring the things that make me happy around the
Nice.
sides. So really, I would say that as I came along, went from Eastman to Chicago to play in the Civic Orchestra of Chicago, picked up a regional orchestra contract a year or two out of school. So I was principal oboe down in the Illinois Symphony, which in Springfield, which was a long way from Chicago, and it was this little dinky contract, but there I was, principal oboe, and it made me so
Yeah.
happy. And then from there, I really just kept evolving.
Nice.
I started my reed business, which I can talk about if that's interesting, and over time, I got more and more intentional about how I was going to run that, and I just sort of welcomed all of the various sidelines that occurred to me.
Yeah.
And over time, I evolved very slowly, right? But I just sort of kept leaning into the things that felt easy and fun and creative for me to do,
Yeah.
and away from the things that sapped my energy.
Yeah. That's beautiful. Great advice. I think there's so much more we can do beyond just, like you're saying, the one paycheck, go play in an orchestra full time. There's so much that we can create by ourselves, and with other musicians.
Exactly. And I feel exactly. And I feel so passionate about that. There are plenty of people who had beautiful single paycheck jobs that they were happy in. And when coronavirus shut everything down, also their paycheck went away.
Yeah.
Like it's not that safe actually to be in one of those jobs, as much as those jobs are 100% the goal that people have leaving conservatory. Which is not, I'm not trying to discourage anyone from pursuing that. That's not my thing either. But the fact that when we all locked down and all of my performing income went away for an entire year, I had so many things that I could pivot into and do. I was already making reeds. Of course, the reed business went down because unsurprisingly, when oboists aren't playing in the world, they don't need as many reeds.
Yeah.
But apparently they don't need 0 reeds.
Yeah.
So I was still doing that. And I had already started doing a group program for adult oboists before the pandemic even happened. But once we shut down, I did more of that, because turns out people who are shut up inside their house like still want to learn and still want to be in community and still want to meet other oboists, which is a problem even without a pandemic, because there's never enough oboists around. So So. Um, Between the teaching that I've been doing
Mm,
and the pivot that I've made toward teaching in groups and teaching adults rather than teaching like eighth graders who show up at my house every Tuesday at 4:15. Um, it's been such a pleasure for me. I've really enjoyed doing that. I created because I had been doing Obo Read Boot Camp every summer
yeah.
here in South Bend, a live weekend event. Obviously, that couldn't happen last year, so I created an online version of it, which was a 6-week read making course, um, which I've now run twice. And it's been such a pleasure because I really like talking about the oboe and I really like talking about read making and I really like sort of the process of breaking down into words something that feels intuitive to me,
Yeah.
right? Like before I started my 5-minute read maker video series, look, I'm on all sorts of tangents right now. Before I started that video series, I couldn't have told you
Mm,
how I structured my batch processing, my day 1, day 2, day 3.
yeah.
I did it, but I couldn't talk about it. I couldn't have put into words how I build the tip, how I build the rooftop. It was the game of putting those things that I knew how to do into words for other people to understand.
Yeah.
Like that's what felt fun. And
Yeah.
so that's what I've been really leaning into
Yeah,
this
that's
year.
so awesome. And we need so much of that. Everyone needs to, put into words how they come to reads, and work on reads. And
Mm-hmm.
because what one person says might click for someone and what someone else says might click for someone else.
Oh,
So
absolutely.
yeah. And
Absolutely.
actually, so all of your videos, I love all of your videos. Sometimes when I'm making reads, I'll just put them on my laptop and make reads while you're scraping on some reads. But your reads actually, or your videos actually inspired me to start this series so that I could talk to other oboists and learn about their processes and basically what you're saying, have people put into words what it is that they're doing, which takes time, to
Mm-hmm.
develop, and is so important. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
I absolutely agree. And first of all, like kudos to you because this is
Yeah.
such a
Oh,
cool
thank you.
series, and it's absolutely something that I had thought about doing, but like never
Yeah.
quite got around to, because it didn't because it was different before the
Yeah.
pandemic,
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
and it wasn't so clear to me that like the entire world was just on the other side of my internet device.
Yeah. Yeah. Same.
Um,
Yeah.
so so I love this.
Yeah. Thank you.
Um, and and yes, I feel like even I just got finished with a round of my Zero to Read Maker course, and
Yeah.
one of the I feel as though one of the important lessons that I talk about really early on in that course is just put words on what about your read you don't like. Like, let's not just start scraping.
Yeah.
Oh, this read is terrible. I shall. How is it terrible? Is it too
Yeah.
hard? Is it too easy? Is it too hard in the response or in the sustain? Do
Mm.
you like the way it beeps? Do you feel like there's too much resistance? What is the problem? Is it too
Yeah.
open? Uh, does it sound weird? Is it too flat? Is it too, so, um, put as many descriptive words on it as possible, and then you can make a hypothesis about what you need to do to the read
Nice. Yeah, that's
after
great
that.
advice. Yeah. All of my young students who have not started read making yet, I always encourage them, tell me what it is, what it is you don't like about this read. It's such a good exercise for young
Mm-hmm.
students.
It
Um,
absolutely is.
yeah. Which actually brings me to another submitted question,
Oh, cool.
which is when should students start working on reads?
I mean, in an ideal world, where in an ideal world, I want students to feel like they are oboe players and to know the difference inside their mouth between a good read and a bad read.
Mm,
And to have already transitioned from those like store-bought reads to handmade reads made
nice.
by somebody, so that they have a sense of what is the difference between one read and another, and how do I compensate because
Yeah.
reads are different, but you want to like get the job done.
Right.
Um, so what does that mean? Like late middle school, probably.
Okay.
I sort of would hesitate to do anything before eighth or ninth grade,
Nice.
usually,
Yeah.
because I want them to have a little bit of standards
Yeah.
around what they sound like and what it feels like to play and what they have to do.
Yeah. No, that's great advice. Yeah. A great starting point, I think. Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. Let's see. Another submitted question.
Okay.
Um, this one I thought was interesting. We've had this one before, and I've done my best to give advice, but I'm curious, as someone who's, more developed in their career, what advice would you have for someone who is coming back to the oboe after a long break?
Have a little self-compassion is the first thing, because the oboe is
Mm.
harsh to people who are starting back up.
Yeah.
Um, if possible, get yourself, if possible, work with a teacher or with a professional at least a few times, because there's so much drama on the oboe. And sometimes it's that the instrument is a little out of adjustment. Perhaps if you are coming back to the oboe that has been in your closet for the last decade,
Yeah.
that is probably out of adjustment.
Yeah.
And so
Need some
as you're
TLC. Yeah.
right, exactly. And as you're struggling to like make your low D's and your C's work, you are probably struggling in a way that is not really productive. And we oboists, we always blame ourselves first. So if your instrument is a little out of adjustment, you'll start by saying, "Oh, why can't I get that low C? I suck. I will practice harder. I will try harder. I will blow harder. I will clench harder with my fingers. I will work harder."
Yeah.
And like, I don't find that helpful, right? That's not good. If you're working with a teacher or a professional, they can also diagnose, is the reed the problem here? Because sometimes the reed is the problem. As an oboist, I don't like to blame the reed. I want to keep the dirty work of reed making like at home, and show up and be
Make it
and
work.
show up and like take care of it, make it work. I don't want to be the person who's like, "I'm sorry, my reed isn't working today." That's not what I want. But sometimes it's the reed, right? And if you're coming back to the oboe after a long layoff, it feels terrible right away, no matter how good your reed is and no matter how good your oboe is. But if your reed and your oboe are suboptimal, that's not helping you.
Right. Yeah.
So get yourself set up well to start, and then just do a little bit every day for a little while. If you've got music from back then that you remember loving, play that. If you've got music that you heard someone else do that sounds interestingly challenging at the right level, like try that, because the goal probably is to get comfortable and to like start spending some time on the instrument. And playing scales is not interesting. It is a little bit for me, okay, but
it can be, on
it
occasion,
can be, but you have to like dig in to make scales be really interesting and fun. So my advice, if I'm being asked, for someone who's coming back to the oboe, is make sure that you've got yourself set up for success as much as possible, and then play music you like that feels fun and enjoyable, and try to find your place of flow, that place where you're like dug into the work in a way that feels interesting and not like a strain and a terrible thing. So that, and then once you've been doing that for a week or two, then you can start like turning the self-critical brain on a little bit if necessary, and think about how you would want to do it better.
Yeah, that's perfect advice, and that's even great advice for oboists who are doing this all the time, and we get caught up in our own world of being self-critical and, oh my gosh, I can't play this instrument and what am I doing? Just take some time, step back, play something you love. And most days I'll try to end my practice with like just a few minutes of something I love. Maybe it's a Barrett etude, maybe it's the Strauss concerto or something like that. But sometimes I really need those like centering moments of like, okay, this is why I do this. I remember now. This is why.
Yeah, exactly. And
Nice.
I mean, not to be a I feel like I talk about warm-ups all the time too, right?
They're
And
so important.
they are so important. And I guess I would say to this hypothetical person coming back to the oboe,
Mm.
like you don't even start with that. Start by just playing things that you like. You'll be exhausted in 5 minutes anyway. It's fine.
Yeah, yeah,
But as you move on a little bit, like develop a little bit of a warm-up routine that involves a little bit of long tone, a little bit of technical work, a little bit of sight reading maybe.
yeah,
Um, just to give you that just to give you that moment to transition from the world to the oboe.
yes, yeah,
I find that I can really, really feel the difference between the days that I like go straight to the stand and start dealing with the thing I have to play
yeah,
versus the when I come to the stand and spend 2 minutes,
yeah,
maybe 5 minutes doing long tones and just like remembering what it feels like to connect my air and my reed and my oboe all together to like make a sound, to
yeah,
get it balanced, to get it centered, to get it comfortable in my body. And it's amazing how over the course of 2 to 5 minutes of long tones, all of the hecticness that I came to my practice room with goes away.
yeah, definitely. I was working with Miss Stroman. I guess I remember it was a year or two ago, but she mentioned, treating your warm up as almost like a meditation. Like coming to the oboe, like you're saying, like leaving everything else behind, and just kind of relearning the oboe every
Mm-hmm.
day.
That is
How, yeah,
exactly what I think about.
yeah, and I think that's such a helpful way to approach playing. It will bleed into your other practice sessions, and it'll be
Mm-hmm.
more enjoyable. Um,
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
definitely. Awesome.
Yeah,
Cool.
cool. Yeah, what else, how else can I be interesting and
Yeah.
helpful here?
Well, let's see. One question that I think a lot of like my student read makers have is, at what point do I give up on a read? Like if it's not going well, maybe I've scraped out a tip or something, a corner. What point should they give up, and just move on to the next one?
I scrape aggressively
Mm,
so that I never find myself like agonizing over the choice
mm,
of am I going to get rid of this read or not. I sort of think about it in terms of a strike system a little bit. So if my cane cracks when I'm winding it, that's
mm.
not fatal, but it's strike one. And if my corner goes away as I'm scraping it, that's not fatal necessarily. I mean, depending on how badly I did that, but it's maybe strike two.
Yeah,
So like you can get to a place where the reed is so beat up that it doesn't appear to have any hope of success, and
yeah,
it feels bad, and you're like, okay, we're moving on. Um, but I guess I would tend to say that a lot of reads are recoverable. So okay, let me answer the question better. Fatal flaws, I think, are discovering that you have overwound the reed, so your thread is above 47 or whatever your staple dimension is. That's usually a fatal flaw.
yeah,
If the reed is like flared open at the tip, and won't soak closed,
yeah,
I'd say that's fatal.
yeah.
Obviously, if it's cracked, it's fatal.
Mm.
If you've got one of those like if you've done damage to the rail right below the heart,
Oh, yes, yeah.
right? So that region right below the heart, which I do dig out very deeply, but I will let my knife cheat toward the center rather than cheating to the side because I think it's really important to have a successful
Yeah.
rail
A
up.
structure. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, up to the heart at least. So if you get damage over there in that region and thus a leak at the side,
Mm.
that's probably fatal.
Yeah. Yeah.
But almost anything else, I would at least try to recover it, but I would not try. But the worse it looks, the less hard I would try.
Okay. Yeah. That
And
makes sense. That makes total
yeah,
sense. Yeah.
because yeah. Um, Also, I personally will sacrifice things pretty fast if they get ugly looking because I can't sell an ugly looking reed. So unless it feels great in my mouth and I want it for me,
Yeah.
that's fine. If I've wrecked it, it has to go. But generally, I would say we make reads to play. We don't make them to look at. So
Mm,
I do not get worked up about corners, raggedy tips,
yeah,
anything aesthetic. If
nice,
it's, if I'm not trying to sell it.
nice. Yeah, I think that's
The
such an important like distinction is that like looks are important, but they're not everything. Yeah,
100%. All of the reads in my actual case are terrible looking,
yeah,
actually, because
same. Yeah.
partly because, like when you're making cookies, you eat all the funny looking ones yourself before you
Mm.
show them to the public.
Yes.
It's kind of that mentality,
Yeah.
uh, and also like as I play them, they get chipped. Things
Yeah.
happen.
Yeah.
So none of the
That's
reads in my actual case are pristine looking.
yeah, that's a perfect analogy. The the ugly cookies. That's great. Yeah.
Yeah,
Cool.
yeah.
Well, I'm curious how much I know in your videos you talk about this some, but how much do you go off of the crow versus how it's playing?
Well, it's interesting because what I say and what I do might be a little different.
Mm.
Um, because I preach the gospel of a sea crow, right? I
Mhm.
I, I believe in the sea crow as
Amen. Yeah.
as a useful diagnostic
Yeah.
tool, right? If my reed isn't crowing, I will scrape harder until it crows.
Mm.
And if it's not crowing a C, I will clip until it crows a C. And sometimes if I'm like in a real busy place, I will finish my day two reads to a sea crow and like have them feel right in my mouth, but I won't even put them on the oboe sometimes
Oh wow, okay.
um, on day two if I'm in that kind of a hurry, or if I'm like making reads away from home and it's not conducive to honking on the oboe.
Yeah.
Um, so I love that. But when I'm teaching read making, I find that a lot of times, like over Zoom, um, someone on the other side just can't get a crow to happen. And rather
Yeah.
than spending an hour diagnosing, like, are their lips in the wrong place on the read? Are they blowing not hard enough? Is there an actual problem with this read? I'll spend a few minutes looking at structure and symmetry in the read and seeing if we can figure out where the crow is not.
Hmm.
Um, but if they play that read and it works fine, I don't care if it crows or not. You're not going
Yeah.
to play it from crow position.
Yeah.
It's a useful diagnostic, but if you've got a working read, who cares?
Yeah. Nice. Nice. It's interesting you mentioned the some students not being able to get a crow. 'Cause like I'll make student reads and I'll send them
Mm-hmm.
out to my students and then they'll try to make a crow and I'm like, I just crowed on that, last
Right.
week.
Exactly. I know this read
Yeah.
crows. It's just that
Yeah.
you are a sissy. Um,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
but you don't say that.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm like, use more air, but yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So like it doesn't
Yeah.
matter. You can if your read plays, it doesn't have to crow if you're happy.
Nice. Yeah. Nice. Someone just asked, my friend LeBaron. Hi,
Ooh.
LeBaron. Thoughts
Oh,
on
hey
English
Laverne.
horn reeds? Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
Like shape, staple, cane, and wire or no wire.
I mean, I feel like I'm about to like go unfussy again and skate over the surface a little bit, but yes,
Okay.
let me talk about this because I'm not
Sure.
an English horn specialist, not really.
Mm, mm,
So I use mostly these super basic staples that are simply brass. They have no markings on them. They also come from aspen woodwinds. I get them inexpensively, and they're uh, super. Um, they're consistent, but they're super super basic, and I don't have a problem with that. I put a little aquarium tubing on them like so to help them seal on the boko.
nice.
The shapes that I use for English horn are Jennet standard, and I also really, really love the Jacobasi, which
Okay.
is
Yeah.
a little wider and a little more flared, and I have really fallen in love with it. So most of the ones I sell are the Jennet. I feel like they hold their pitch up better, but most of the ones in my actual case are Jacobasi. I
Nice.
used to, oh, let's see. I also really love these Chudnow tubes with the
Mm,
O-rings at the bottom.
me
Um,
too.
not just because of the convenience of the O-rings at the bottom, but also because I really like the way they play.
Mm,
But I'm not offering those anymore because it was a little cumbersome to make them for other people, and they're pretty expensive.
They
But
are. Yes.
I really like them for myself in my like non-English horn specialist kind of way. I do wire. It's the last thing I do. I basically get the reed
Same.
to where it plays and feels comfortable, and then I throw wire on it to help like tame it a little bit more.
Yeah. I do the same with wire. Yeah. Wait until the last possible second. Yeah.
Exactly. And then also like English horn reeds are so forgiving.
Yeah.
So I almost have to remind myself to actually finish them before I send them out because like they
Mm.
play right away. They're fine. They're
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Awesome. Thank you for that input.
Yeah, of course.
We had another question. This one question
Ooh,
is, since Jeanette is playing, Jennet, sorry,
thank you.
Jennet is
Did you
playing the
see me
Bach.
glare at you? Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's okay. Um, since you are playing the Bach D'Amour Concerto next month,
Uh-huh.
can you offer any D'Amour read hints for those of us that are in the cheap seats?
Mm-hmm. Um, and I love the oboe d'amore, right? It's the cutest of the oboe family and
Yes.
and in many ways the easiest. And I'm even more like sort of improvisational on oboe d'amore reeds than I am on
Mm,
English horn reeds because you only play the oboe d'amore like a couple times a year
yeah.
generally.
Yeah.
So I use
If that. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
So I use this shape which I've been calling a Rigotti 2, but I actually have no idea what it really is. It just says 2 on it, and it's an
Okay.
oboe shape, as opposed to like being an English horn sized shape. It's an
Mhm.
oboe sized shape, and it's quite wide. It's much too wide for oboe,
Yeah.
but it's relatively narrow compared to some oboe d'amore shapes I've seen.
Mm.
Like I had bought some D'Amour shaped cane, I don't know, a decade ago, and found it to be so flared and wide that I couldn't get it up to pitch. So I just
Gotcha.
stick with this shape that says number 2 on it.
Nice.
And I wind it at about 50, between 50 and 52, depending on how it's feeling at how I'm feeling at the moment. Which again, I'm actually a little bit militant about checking that blank measurement for oboe
Yeah.
reeds and for English horn reeds too. But oboe d'amore is all
Like,
improvisation
yeah.
for me.
Yeah.
So I'll wind it between 50 and 52,
Nice.
and then I scrape it precisely exactly like an oboe reed,
Okay.
because it is an oboe shape, so it looks and acts like an oboe reed, except that it won't go to a C crow; it goes to like an E flat crow or something crazy.
Gotcha. Yeah,
But
that's
I really like I just make the read sort of by smell.
okay.
I don't have metrics
Yeah. Yeah.
on the oboe d'amore reads, but if I compared my d'amore read to my oboe read side by side, which I suppose I could do. Uh, oh God, I'll just hunt that one down. If I compare my d'amore reed to my oboe reed side
Oh
by
wow.
side,
Yeah.
right, the thread to thread, the d'amore reed over here is, sorry, I'm looking for focus. Yes.
Nice.
Um, the d'amore reed is a hair longer
Yeah.
and a hair wider,
Mm,
but they're basically exactly the same. They look the same.
nice. Yeah. And what oboe shape is that?
This, I think it's Joshua 2. It's
Okay.
possible that it's the Liang shape,
Okay. Nice.
also on that Reads and Stuff profiler.
Cool. Cool. Yeah, I think I actually might have that same shape. I got an RDG2 at the beginning of quarantine. I was like, I'm just gonna try a wide shape. And so I went to the furthest end of the spectrum,
Mm-hmm.
and of course I cannot get it up to pitch.
Right.
But yeah, I've had some people say it can be used for D'Amour beats. So
There
um,
you go.
yeah.
Does it look like mine with just this? Sorry, have I lost it
Yes.
already?
Yeah,
Just
it
a
just
single
has the
little 2
little
on it.
two on it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then it's an RDG2,
Yeah.
y'all. That's what it is.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, that makes sense actually. It looks now that I'm looking at it just like
Mm,
the other RDG shapes,
nice. Yeah.
except the 2 is in smaller type.
Yeah. Yeah. And do you use wire on D'Amour reeds?
I don't,
Okay.
because they feel like oboe reeds, and I wouldn't wire an oboe reed
Yeah.
probably.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Awesome.
And I say
Well,
probably, I say probably, but I've definitely like sent, um, I've sent students out into the world with wired oboe reeds
oh yeah,
because sometimes a person needs what a person needs.
yeah. And what is your like? Some people use wire for the opening. Some people use it for high upper notes, having those sit up. What is the main like advantage of using wire?
Um, for me, I use it on English horn reeds to control the opening and to just like tame it a little bit so there's not quite so much like flappy cane.
Yeah.
And when I have wired oboe reeds for students, it has always been to solve a problem where the reed was collapsing, but the student was unwilling to buy a new reed or
Gotcha.
play a new reed.
Nice. Nice.
Yeah,
Awesome.
I
Well,
mean, I'm not proud of that. When I send them forth with that, I'm like,
yeah.
okay, here's this reed, and now it will work for you, but don't tell anyone
Yeah.
that I said this was
No,
okay.
it was not me. No.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. That's awesome. I'll have to try that on some of my collapsed reads just to
Hmm.
see what happens. Yeah. Awesome. Well, Jeanette, thank you so much.
Of
My
course.
last final question for you is what advice do you have for young read makers, people who are just starting out, besides the fact that they should join your Zero to Read Maker course? What other advice do you have for them?
I mean, make more reads and don't be afraid to scrape.
Mm,
Um, the biggest thing that I see is that people get themselves to um, almost okay with the read. Like it begins to sort of play and then they just stop scraping and they force themselves to play on it even though it's too hard. And I would say to that, like, don't be afraid to experiment. If you are getting to a consistent roadblocky place
mm,
where like my reads always feel like this and I don't like it, like collect 3 reads like that and then
yeah.
scrape the bejesus out of one of them and figure out what works. Sometimes I think people about get so shy about scraping
Yeah.
that like it does the scrape that they're doing doesn't make a difference,
Yeah.
doesn't give them anything because they haven't done enough of it.
Nice. Yeah.
So and I guess I would also say don't get emotionally attached. Just like if the read doesn't work, make another one because it's a long game.
Yeah.
The skill of really getting to where your reads feel consistent and feel good to you, it's a long process. So just make more of them.
Yeah. Nice. That is awesome advice. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining me. I really enjoyed chatting with you. You gave great advice, and we all learned a lot um, about a lot of different things. Obo reads, English one reads, Demora reads. Yeah, I'll definitely. Someone asked, "Can I please save this?" I will definitely save this. This will be posted on Read Design's Instagram feed. So definitely we can rewatch. I'll definitely rewatch pretty soon. So yeah, thank you so much, Janet.
oh, oh yeah,
Um,
absolutely. Oh, sorry. Can I say one thing?
oh yes, yeah, go
To
ahead.
the people who are watching, because I am doing a free 3-day training starting tomorrow over on
Mm,
Facebook about the high register. And we
nice.
will delve into reads a little bit on the third day, but the first 2 days we're just going to deal with fingerings and air and voicing and how to like get really comfortable up in the register above high C.
Nice.
And I have a link in my Instagram bio that you could sign up and join me for free if you
Awesome. I
wanted
will
to.
probably join you. Yeah. I'll have to check the schedule, but I would love to join. That'd be great.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, and
of
I'll see you
course.
tomorrow.
All right, wonderful. I'll see ya. Thanks so much for
Bye.
having me. Bye.
Of course.